So welcome everyone to tonight's talk at Mountain Cloud. I'd like to start with a poem that was sent by a student in response to one that I shared. There's this wonderful give and take going on all the time in this practice. This one is by Jane Hirschfield from her collection, The Asking. The poem is called 5 Pebbles. The title reminds me of an instruction on how to sit with a koan. How do you do that? Well, one way is to allow sitting to settle like a clear mountain lake with the wind died down. And then, just some moment, you drop in the koan. Drop it into that stillness, like a pebble into a lake, falling through the surface, the ring circling out, and the pebble just settling on the bottom. The lake, again, quiet. So here is Hirschfield's 5 Pebbles. Sort of like 5 haiku in open form, just dropping. Here and now. Try to describe it. Even one quick line drawn with unlifted pencil, already wrong. Words stop. Words stop. A great tenderness arises. Why do I set this down now in words? 3. Chrysanthemum. It doesn't need to know its own fragrance. 4. Vestment. For the pear, for the fig, no difference. They ripen, even in ashfall. I guess that was 5. 5 pebbles. Even in ashfall. This past weekend, I met with the Israeli Dharma teacher that I've spoken about from time to time. I don't know how long ago it was, sometime during COVID. She found Mountain Cloud and found me and reached out. She and her family live in northern Israel, not far from the border with Lebanon. So this last time, just recently, Sharon reached out because she'd heard a recording of a talk from a few weeks ago here. I gave this talk entitled, sort of thanks to Abby's prodding, to give talks a title, Don't Despair About Despair. And in the course of that talk, I named Gaza, Ukraine, the devastating fires in LA, named them as ciphers, sort of, I guess you could say, of what I called an iconic time. Iconic as in one body of suffering. under these names. One body. This body, actually. So Sharon emailed and she wrote that she liked the talk, except for one thing. I said Gaza, but not Israel. Ukraine, but not Russia. I was picking sides, she wrote. And even if I didn't intend to convey these boundaries, like good, bad, in, out, she said, listeners have dualistic minds. You never know who's hearing this, she said. They would divide. Here and now. Already wrong. Words stop. Why do I set this down now in words? A living koan. So we met for an hour, talking together about the world situation, about practicing in the midst. But mostly it was a chance to hear about life in Israel and about Sharon's life. After we spoke, I just sat a bit and then jotted down a few notes, like the phrases that struck, that resonated still. Something like one might do after hearing a talk. So I'll just share a bit of it. Sharon's got 2 daughters, and the older daughter has just turned 18. She's in her last year of high school there in Israel, about to take her exams. And part of their tradition is that each graduating class chooses, it's a small school, so they choose a play among themselves, and they read it, and study it, and rehearse it, and perform it. And this year, they were encouraged to pick something kind of light. Come on. It's so hard. But those students chose a play, I think she said, in translation, I couldn't find it online, but she said it was called Summer Blues, about a wartime in the 1970 in Israel, another, as she's put it, another war. That happened to be a war with Egypt. In Israel, it's, I think we know, part of the system is it's mandatory to be in the army. So you turn 18 and you face that. You can take a year off. So her daughter is taking a year to go teach in an underprivileged setting. But then, the army. So in this play, she described one of the young people is accidentally killed. And it raises the question, Sharon said, like a kongan, like a koan. Is it good to die for your country? And in the course of exploring that, there was a scene where the students were just dancing around in a circle, and one by one they fall to the ground, dead. Is it good to die for your country? Over the course of our conversation, Sharon has shared that their family had really hoped to leave Israel they happen to be on the kind of left-leaning side of politics there, and have really been feeling like it's such a tough time that it would be good to leave. And of course they have these 2 daughters. So they had put all their hope in a community in the United States where they could go, and her husband, who's kind of overseeing a community in Israel, there are communities not so different, Jewish communities in the United States, that hire people to kind of oversee them. And so he had applied for this thinking it was a perfect fit, and because in his youth he kind of bailed from the army, he was rejected so long ago. And what I remember her saying was, everything, this hope, clinging, she said, to this hope, Zen teacher, clinging to this hope. And it became clear it's not possible. She said, everything fractured. And yet a voice comes up within. Don't know from where. Keep on going. And then she told about watching the scenes of the hostages being released on TV, watching the taunting, the unthinkable way that this was done. She said, let the tears flow. And then, not long after that, toward the end of our conversation, she said, it snowed today. It just doesn't really snow in Israel. But it snowed, a light snow. She paused and said, we call ourselves the naive club of bodhisattvas. We bowed and waved and signed off. The naive club of bodhisattvas. Sign me up. Sign us all up. Bodhisattva, literally awakening being. In its early meaning, it was a being who is on the way to awakening, on the way to becoming enlightened, to perceiving reality, as our chant says. The reality that's here all the time, always, and somehow, this. Bodhisattva then became, in the Mahayana tradition, one who is fully awake, and yet, rather than leaving the world of suffering, this saha world, choosing to stay, embodying compassion toward the awakening of all beings. So I'd like to turn now to a koan that's born out of this compassion. It's a case from the Mumonkan Gateless Gate that addresses us in our sitting and in our experience, addresses us with the question, what moves? So let's listen and let it fall into the still lake of here and now. Case 29 of the Mumonkan. It's called Not the Wind, not the flag. Here's the case. The wind was flapping a temple flag, and two monks were having an argument about it. One said, "The flag is moving." The other said, "The wind is moving." They argued back and forth but could not reach the truth. The sixth ancestor said, "It is not the wind that moves. It is not the flag that moves. It is your mind that moves." The two monks were struck with awe. This koan came to mind a couple of weeks ago when it was offered as one of the 30 Days of Zen posts. Our 30 days this month on everyday Zen. This Zen. For that post, Carolyn added the practice pointer. This is her writing. Sitting on your cushion, you may believe that your task is to stop the mind from moving. But no matter how hard you try, the mind moves. How is trying to stop the mind any different from trying to stop the wind? When you move, sit, stand, walk, think, what's going on? Is anything moving? What is this? So let's step back and just have a look at the case. The sixth ancestor, famously, is Huineng, or in Japanese, Eno. Sixth in line after Bodhidharma. So he's the sixth Chinese ancestor, according to the record. His story, Huineng's story, is formative in Chan and Zen, as is his teaching, really pivotal. So just a bit of it. His father died when he was very young. He lived with his mother in extreme poverty as a child. They gathered kindling in the woods and went around in a village and sold it door to door just to be able to eat. So knocking on one door one time, he hears the phrase chanted from a back room, "Dwelling nowhere, mind comes forth." Just seeing the flowers, that array, the Buddha, the candle, the card with Johanna Sindelar on it, the evening light. Dwelling nowhere, mind comes forth. And suddenly, Huineng hears this. Actually, his given name is No, N-O. He hears it and he comes to a deep realization. And he finds his way to a monastery. So much to figure out, and yet the path opens up. And there, the fifth Chinese ancestor meets him at the gate, sees him, and pushes him. "Where have you come from?" "From Huineng." It just means south of a mountain. "What did you come for?" "What did you come for?" "To become Buddha." "You cannot become Buddha because the people of Huineng have no Buddha nature." sounds so cruel, sounds, divided. But Kon Roshi Yamada Kon says the abbot was trying to shake Huineng. But he's unshaken. And he answers, though there is south and north for humans, how can there be a south and north for Buddha nature? This young guy never read anything, can't write. Somehow, no basis for comparing, no inside or out. No. No's experience had been anything but that, and yet he sees this one all-pervading equality. So the abbot allows him to stay, but relegates him to the rice shed. He doesn't get to sit in the zendo. He doesn't get to practice with the monks. He gets to clean the rice. And then along the way, the time comes for this abbot, the fifth ancestor, to choose a successor. And he invites his monks, anyone who will, to write a verse, to present your view, this Dharma, the Dharma that you've received, the world that you're seeing, that you're sharing. And the senior monk, who feels naturally this ought to be his inheritance, he writes a verse. He can't bring himself, the story goes, to give it in person to this abbot. So finally he puts it on a piece of paper and somehow adheres it to the wall in a hallway that the abbot walks down regularly. And here's his verse. The body is the Bodhi tree, Bodhi awakening. The mind is like that stand of a clear mirror. Wipe it clean from time to time. Never let dust and rubbish adhere to it. That's just one translation. This is very large. Some of them rhyme, some of them have rhythm. This is Kon Roshi's translation. And Huineng sees this verse up there, cannot read it, so he asks the head cook, read that to me. And the cook does, and he says, well, could you write another verse? This is Huineng's verse. The Bodhi is intrinsically no tree, nor has the clear mirror any stand. There's not one thing from the beginning. Where can dust and rubbish adhere at all? Some versions of this story say that the head cook didn't just put it next to the other verse, but actually just crossed out some of the characters and kind of edited it to just upturn it. For a long time in my practice, I thought this second verse just wiped out the first. Actually, we need them both. Practice awakening. The abbot saw the verse and had a sense of who wrote it. So as the story goes, he went down to the rice shed at midnight. This whole scene is in a later collection, The Transmission of Light. And the abbot knocks on the door 3 times. And from behind the door, Huineng sifts the rice 3 times. Ch, ch, ch. that's it. Transmission. So the abbot knows that it's not going to go well with the monks, particularly that head monk. So he himself rows Huineng across the river and says, you gotta just go. Go away for 10 years. Which wasn't so unusual, actually. Monks would go off in pilgrimage or to be a hermit. Yeah. So then, some 15 years later, the record says, 15 years of practice, Huineng hears that there's going to be a lecture on a sutra in a monastery that he really wants to hear, so he goes there. And while he's there, that abbot recognizes his depth, asks about his lineage, and ordains him. All that time, and now here. So while he's there, staying at that monastery, Huineng overhears an argument between two monks, and he steps in. He steps in, and he steps down to their level. He offers a turning word that might unhinge the monk's assumptions, might strike a chord, might make the world fall open, even if the word is only provisional, an act of compassion. And it's Huineng's first recorded teaching. The flag, the wind, the flag. No, neither. It's your mind that moves. Doesn't say the monks awakened, but they're struck with awe. That's a good condition. What is moving? What is mind? Is there any such thing? Mind. The most common lament I hear in this shared practice is about monkey mind, the story of silent sitting. Just this week, someone came really decided in the stuckness of distraction and suffering that gap. I can't get out in front of it. Even knowing this mind train will happen, it's only well after the intrusion that I notice what's going on. Okay. Is it the flag? Is it the wind? What is moving? Sitting with this today, it brought to mind another koan from early in the miscellaneous koans, right after Mu and Sambo Zen. You come into this small collection. And one of the very first ones is, stop the sound of the distant temple bell. Stop the sound of the distant temple bell. I've mentioned this before, that one young teacher out in a Great Vow monastery, a student went to her with this koan, and all she said was, Can you ever really stop anything? What's moving? And what if that distant sound is right here? And what if it's always already gone? But that's an explanation. The koans say, show me. Not the wind, not the flag, it's your mind that moves. How is that? What's moving? Show me. If you can fall into this koan, let the world, the whole world, fall open. It's utterly still. Stillness and movement, movement and stillness, not a hair's breadth of a gap. Tasting this, it's clear it's not about some distant time, some flag there and not here. It's really just about us in all our faltering humanity. This stillness of one transparency. Is it this? Is it that? Just coming up. As Bob Dylan put it, blowing in the wind. Zen sometimes calls this world of fundamental reality ku. Ku in Japanese, empty sky. Empty of fixed or lasting substance. Empty of a separate self, of any separation. And at the same time, each bit of it equal and of inestimable value. It moves, and it moves us. It. Years ago, when we were practicing at Maria Kanan Zen Center in Dallas, I found that place ahead of Scott. So I don't think you were there then, but we were renting a room on the second floor of a beautiful old church near downtown Dallas. Wooden floor, windows along one wall, dedicated zendo so we could leave our mats, cushions out, and there was a small altar near the front with this photograph of Yamada Kon Roshi on it, our teacher's teacher. And I don't know how long I've been sitting there, but long enough to feel quite at home. One night, whoever was closing down the zendo blew out the candle on the altar. We had a little votive in a dish. But somehow that night, even though blown out, a spark remained. So we all left, and the candle flame came back. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, the sirens went off, and fire trucks came, and the place was on fire. The candle had burned through, and where the altar had been, there was just a hole in the floor. I went the next day with some of us, just totally incinerated. Any trace of it gone. It turns out that a member of the Sangha, a good friend, had taken a picture of the picture and gave it to me as a gift. I have it right now right above where I sit. It's not only Kon Roshi, and it's like a reflection. You can see the light through the window and the reflection on this frame. But underneath, in his own hand, he wrote, "When your consciousness has become ripe by true zazen, pure like clear water, like a serene mountain lake, not moved by any wind, then anything may serve as a medium of enlightenment." Not moved by any wind. Does that mean be vigilant, keep polishing, don't let a thought land, don't grab onto it? Sure. Keep practicing. And yet, but, what if from the beginning there really is no place for a thought to land? No mirror, no stand, no dust, or as the Heart Sutra puts it, no hindrance of mind. There's no boundary. There's no border. There's nothing to run into anything. So feel free. Well, I'd like to say that to Israel and Gaza, Russia and Ukraine, to this administration, where chaos and division seem to rule the land. What moves? If we think, oh, it's only the mind, that's not it. I have the feeling Huineng is just borrowing this language to try to help these arguing monks. But his Dharma, his world, isn't a world where we abandon gathering kindling or cleaning rice. Huineng awakened to this fact. This world, empty, borderless, not a speck of dust, and the absolute same world. We call it absolute. It's absolutely the same as that world where people are poor, hungry, illiterate, and seeking what it is to be fully human. I think I'll cut to the chase here. There's so much about this case. Maybe just one more story. About a month ago, a longtime practitioner and Mountain Cloud member was diagnosed with breast cancer. I think it's been about 4 weeks. Her surgery's next week, and then followed by treatment. This diagnosis turned the world around. You can imagine. Stop and see. So after years of practice, we know her from Dallas. I've sat together for years. She instinctively started doing Tonglen, this practice. Her version is breathing in the pain. Of course, her own, but not quickly went to the pain of the world and breathing out. Just breathing out. Hers took the form of light. She describes it like shimmering light reflecting on a still lake, bright and wide. I saw her yesterday and she said, wow, just meditate a lot and things change. She was radiant and at the same time grounded. I want to live, she said, but either way, it doesn't matter. We, in the course of that, recalled Reuben, who, our teacher, looks still really directly at this world and says, it's okay. Nothing excluded. Not long ago, I came upon another Hirschfeld poem in a fresh way and sent it around. It called up the question, what if the word Gaza resounds in all directions? What if wherever you turn, it's your original face? All of it. Or, as the American poet Galway Kinnell wrote, what if the title of every good poem is tenderness? Tenderness that goes equally in all directions. Can we say that in the face of everything that's unfolding? Here's that poem, and we're about to close. She called it Late Prayer. Tenderness does not choose its own uses. It goes out to everything equally. Circling rabbit and hawk. Look, in the iron bucket, a single nail, a single ruby, all the heavens and hells, they rattle in the heart and make one sound. One sound. Huineng gathering kindling with his mother in order not to starve. One sound. Finding your way to a place of practice and recognizing it. Nothing lacking. One sound. If it's not the wind, not the flag, then what am I? All this activity. What is moving? For the pear, for the fig, no difference. They ripen, even in ashfall. Thank you for long listening and for this shared practice.